So I thought I was only going to do 2 of these this afternoon, but I'm having fun, so I'm going to carry on. What I've been doing is I've been pulling, you see that? So it's a tray with little bits of paper on it like this one, and this one says car. And chapter car in my book is all about something called the empirical process. So empirical, it's an unusual word that people don't hear very often, empirical. It comes from the Greek word eberia, which means experience. So the empirical process is about experience, about like kind of basing what we do on experience. And the way that I talk about this in my book, the whole point of my book is that if we can see things in different ways, then we can be much smarter about projects. And so I try and explain the empirical process in terms of driving a car. Now, often when the empirical process is talked about, there's a discussion of 3 pillars of the empirical process. And the first pillar of the empirical process is transparency. So, and I compare this, I talk about this in the book, as like driving a car. So what's really important when you're driving a car? One of the most important things when driving a car is that you can see out of it. You can see what's going on around you. You can see what's going on in front of you, so the windscreen is not filthy. And then you can see what's going on behind you, so you've got a wing mirror and you've got a rear view mirror. All of these things are important. This is transparency. And in order to drive a car, you really need to be able to see where you're going. And so the second pillar of empirical process is inspection. And so inspection is basically saying, yes, it's really important that you can see out of the windows of your car and you can see through the mirrors and you see the rear view mirror. But it's also important that you look. You have to actually look out of the window and see what's going on. It's no good that you've got crystal clear windscreen, but you're looking at your phone, and then that's not going to work. So it's not enough to have transparency. You also have to have inspection. You also have to look at what's going on around you. And then the third part of the empirical process is adaptation. So again, like thinking about this in terms of driving a car, it's not enough to have crystal clear windscreens and good views through your rear view mirror and your wing mirrors. And it's not enough to be looking out through the windscreens and looking through the wing mirrors. So inspection and transparency aren't enough. What you need, as well as those 2 things, is you need to actually modify what you're doing in light of what you see through the windows and through your mirrors. And anybody who's had anything to do with projects will know that this in some ways really, really cuts across lots of the things that people try and do in projects. So very often what people try and do in projects is they try and conceal issues that are arising in a project. So they try to stop transparency. Very often the other thing that happens is even if things are made transparent, then various people inside the organization try not to look at what's going on. So you can catalog what's going on, catalog the problems, and then you will have people, very often senior management, who try and not to look at what's going on, try not to pay attention to kind of the things that the transparency and the inspection bring to light. And then finally, the other thing that very often doesn't happen with projects is that people don't adapt. There's no adaptation. So even when they do get to know what's going on in the project, and this is brought to their attention and they pay attention to it, they don't change what they do in light of that. And again, these are pretty important things. One, I use in my projects, I use something called an agile approach. And we have things like, we have a daily meeting, a stand-up meeting for about 15 minutes where we talk about what's been going on in the project. Every 2 weeks, we have a meeting called a retrospective where we talk about how things went over the last 2 weeks, what went well, what didn't go so well, what could we do differently. Every 2 weeks, we have a meeting where we show what we've been doing to clients and other kind of people who might be interested. All of those things are transparency. They're all creating transparency. Now, we can be inspecting on those things, we can be paying attention to them, and we can be trying to change what we're doing in light of what those things are. But there's only so much we can do in terms of adaptation unless other people who are involved in the project are prepared to adapt as well. So this is a really, really useful way of seeing a project, because what it's saying is, if you can improve transparency, basically without transparency, nothing's going to work. That's really what this way of seeing is saying. It's like, what do you mean you're going to try and drive a car without looking out the windows or being able to see through the mirrors? That's not going to work. So without transparency, your project's not going to work. Without inspection, your project's not going to work. So this is like saying, oh yeah, okay, I've got wonderfully clear mirrors and I've got wonderfully clear windscreen, but I'm not going to look out of them. It's not going to work. And finally, what this is saying is, like, the best way to give your project a chance of success is to change what you do in light of what you see. So if something is taking a ridiculously long time and your tech team is struggling with it, then you do have to modify your estimates of how long it's going to take. Or you have to reduce the number of things that you're going to ask them to do. If some particular technology that you were betting on, that you thought was going to be wonderful and was going to make the project marvelous, doesn't actually work, then you're going to have to modify that. You're going to have to change and try and do something else. So this is what empirical process and driving the car is about. So again, kind of like, you have to change what you do in light of what you see. It's not enough to have clear windscreens. It's not enough to look out of them. The only way that you can really drive something, you want to be in control. Lots of people say they want to be in control of projects. The only way you can really be in control of a project is by inspecting, by being transparent, by inspecting as a result of that transparency, and then by adapting as a result of being able to inspect.